Okay, our next episode is called Datalore, and this originally aired on January 16th, 1988, and it was written by Robert Lewin and Gene Roddenberry, and the original story was by Bob Lewin and Maurice Hurley, and it was directed by Rob Bowman. And what this episode really does is it gives us a background for Data and his origins. At the beginning of the episode, the Enterprise takes a trip to Data's homeworld, which is a planet in the Omicron Theta star system. And before Data was an officer on the Enterprise, 26 years ago, a team from the USS Tripoli actually found Data lying on a rock on this world. And as they approached, Data awoke, and he only had vague memories. He had some memories of the colonists who lived there, and that's pretty much it. And after they found him, Data decided to join Starfleet. And that's what, he started off as. He was an ensign, and then he worked his way up into a lieutenant commander like he is now. So that's kind of the backstory about Data. So anyway, the Enterprise crew reaches the planet, and they discover a secret laboratory inside the planet that almost looked like it was supposed to be hidden. And inside, they enter the laboratory, and Data suddenly remembers the name Dr. Soong. And LaForge seems to remember that there was a Dr. Noonien Soong, who was a genius in cybernetics, and apparently he got so far as to create androids, and that's how Data was created. Well, while they're in the laboratory, Data discovers a disassembled android who looks almost exactly like Data. So they decided to bring this disassembled android back to the ship. Data really wants to put this together to figure out more about his background. And that when they put this together, they discover that this is Lore, who refers to Data as his brother. Now, first, Lore says that Data was made first, but he was considered imperfect, so they created Lore to replace him. But they soon realize, and Data suspects this already, that this is not actually the truth, and that Lore was created first. And Lore explains because the colonists were envious of his abilities, that they created Data, who was a less than perfect model, and someone they would not be jealous of. That's Lore's story, anyway. In addition to that, Lore also explains a little bit more of the story of the fate of the planet. He says the planet was destroyed by an alien crystal entity, which appeared and then stripped the life from the planet completely. So all the colonists were killed, and the only reason why Data wasn't affected was because he was created after the attack. So that is the origin according to Lore. But we soon find out that Lore is a little bit different than Data. Number one, he shows emotion. Data can't do that. Lore has a facial tic, and he also understands humor. But one thing that is a negative is that Lore does not seem to have the morals built in that Lieutenant Commander Data does. And this actually shows when Lore starts creating a devious plan to contact the crystalline entity. So he sneaks up behind Data, and actually looks like he drugs Data, actually. Puts something in a drink in champagne, and Data is incapacitated, and Lore quickly takes the place of Data and uses his new identity as Data to access the ship and contact this crystalline entity, who are geared to destroy the Enterprise as a kind of a gift. And it turns out that Lore is actually in cahoots with the crystalline entity, and he was responsible for the deaths of the colonists as well. So, the only one who seems to notice this odd behavior in quote-unquote Data is Wesley, and everyone seems to ignore Wesley. You'd think by now that people would start to understand that Wesley, while he's annoying, he's actually usually the solution to the episode, but they tell Wesley to shut up. Both Picard and then eventually his own mother tell him to do that. Picard eventually orders Wesley and his mother off the bridge, And once they're off the bridge, Wesley drags his mother to Data's quarters and realizes that the true Data has been incapacitated. So they revive Data, and just in time, Data is able to stop Lore. Lore actually holds Wesley hostage briefly, but Lore then is distracted and shoots Dr. Crusher with a phaser, and while that's going on, Data is able to stop Lore and throws Lore onto the transporter pad, and Wesley beams Lore into space. And we think that is the end of Lore. And at the very end of the episode, Picard asks Data if he's alright, and Data says, yes, I'm fine. And he twitches a little bit because Lore actually tried to create the twitch in Data just so everyone would think he was Lore. So Picard tells him to get rid of the twitch. And that's the end of the episode. So I really enjoyed this episode a lot. I think the middle of the first season, they really started to hit their stride and had some good ones. I just reviewed The Big Goodbye. I think that's a strong one. I had a lot of fun watching Haven, and I think this is a lot of fun too. And there's really a dark tone to this. If you've seen the movie Alien and Aliens, you can tell that some of the music is very similar to that of this episode, if you put those two together. And it really sets the tone very well. And I think Brent Spinner does a great job in this episode because he creates two completely different characters. And I think people liked it so much. That's why Lore appears in more episodes later on in the series, because of how well this one turned out. Now, I do really like this episode, but I did mention at the end that Data says to Picard, I'm fine, which is really not a good thing, because the whole time during the episode, Lore distinguishes how he's different from Data. And one thing he says is that Lore can use contractions while Data cannot. And that is basically ignored. I don't know if that was intentional oversight or what happened, but at the end of the episode, Data says, I'm fine. So that's... It is a significant oversight, I think. But overall, I really liked Datalore a lot. And I think people really, who wrote the show, really thought it did well. And the director of the episode, Rob Bowman, was actually scheduled to direct The Big Goodbye, and he was really excited about it. And then, just because of the script not being what it was for Datalore, it needed some improvements and rewrites, he was given this one instead. So Rob Bowman basically said, okay, I'm going to show you. You don't think this is a very good episode? I'm going to make it a great one. And he did, and succeeded really well. So this is another one of my favorites of the first season, Datalore. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next one.